Hey everyone, this is Jessica Stahlbaum, and this is a podcast that I am doing with a guest. My guest is Sarah Wood. Hey Sarah.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Good.
Good.
We just wanted to get together and for posterity's sake, just put together some memories of how did sisterhood start, the backstory, the rest of the story. How did we get here? What is sisterhood, first of all, and then how did it start? So we're just going to start out with Sarah introducing herself and just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, definitely. So my name is Sarah Wood. I have been married to my husband, Sam, for 9 years. We have, well, by the time this podcast comes out, we will have 3 beautiful children.
Yeah.
7. My son Jackson is 7. My daughter Ella is 5. And then I have a little one, Benjamin. Right now, he's in my belly. But by the time I'm sure this comes out, he will probably not be. He will be born. And we are both, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband is an engineer. And so we live pretty full lives, though. We are very involved at East Coast. We love our church, as well as just being involved with all those things that come with having kids, soccer and all that stuff. So
that's right. And you're involved in school, homeroom mom.
Yes,
all that
homeroom
stuff.
mom. Yes, you name it. I love being involved with whatever is in front of me that I am passionate about.
Yes, and you have lots of energy, so that's good.
Yes, amazing. Thank you, Jesus,
yes,
for that.
Amen. So for those who don't know me, I'll just intro myself as well. I'm Jessica Stahlbaum, married to Pastor Matt Stahlbaum at East Coast, and I have 3 kids. Reagan is 13. Hudson is 10, and then Adeline is 6. And the time of this podcast, I would say, is March 2018. So if we say, like, this was 2 years ago, at least you know, like, have a frame of reference. And let's talk about how we met. So my husband started this young adult ministry at East Coast called The Mezzanine, which is still going strong. It's for 18 to 30-year-olds, Sunday nights. For those who don't know about it, if you're a young adult, you should totally go. It's fun and an amazing community. And so we met there. I actually met your husband first before he was your husband, Sam Wood. And so why don't you tell us about how you came into the Mezzanine and how we met? And
Absolutely. It's definitely miraculous. I was not a person who grew up in church. You could say I was a believer, I guess you could say. Like, I believe there was a God, but I never went to church before. And I actually ran into a girl from high school. And barely knew her in high school. We were just acquaintances, and she invited me to come check out her young adult church, Mezzanine. And I thought, hey, well, I might as well. I had just moved home from UCF. I didn't really know a lot of people in Brevard County again. And so I thought, let's check this church out. I'll go once. And so worked for my schedule. I checked it out and just was amazed by the environment that was there. I had never been in an environment like that before. The people were very welcoming, very friendly. It appeared that they just wanted me to plug in. And after a few times of going, I realized it didn't just appear that way, that they wanted me to be a part of it. So that was my start at Mezzanine, and I ended up getting saved there, which is a whole nother story. But it's amazing what God has done just from me stepping into church for the first time and where I am now. But and I met my husband there, Sam Wood. He was stuck up in the production room. So I didn't get to meet him for the first, I would say, 4 to 6 months. He was up there. He called it like the cave. He had never really been down. He was up there. And so we actually met. And he's like, oh, I've never met you, but I've been up in the cave.
Yes, so and I want to know you. And will you marry me?
Yes. So, So that's kind of how we started.
That's awesome. And then Matt and I planted our Viera campus in 2012, February 2012. And you and Sam came with us and helped launch the Viera campus. And at that point, we had a launch team. And so everyone who likes to start things and maybe they have a gift of like apostleship. They want to start new things and fresh things, and they have that energy for that. They've joined us, and we had a great, huge launch team. But all we asked of them was give us 6 months. And, you know, if you decide to stay, great, but just help us build this thing. And so we had a ton of builders who came, and you and Sam were 2 of those people.
Yes, and we were going to stay for 6 months. That was our goal.
I know.
We said, okay, Sam and I prayed about it. We really felt led to do that because we do enjoy building and starting things. And we said, all right, 6 months, we'll give them our time, and then we're out. We're back to Merritt Island. And of course, as much as we love all of our campus, we just knew that God was calling us to Viera. It was home for us. And so we stayed there. And so 6 months has turned into now 6 years. And we will be there until the cows come home.
That's
so
right.
we're there.
Exactly. I just love that part of the story. And all of that time, we didn't really know each other. Acquaintances, yes. I knew your name. I had your number in my phone, but I didn't even know that I did.
Right.
Like, we did not talk or anything. It was just like, hey, Sarah, hey, Jessica, the end. through all that time, even when we planted, I had just
Right.
had Adeline. She was 4 months old when we planted Vieira campus. And so I was in that season of just having a baby, and you guys were rocking it in hospitality and helping in all those areas. So we were not, I would say, friends at that point.
We were definitely acquaintances. Nothing bad. It was just, hey, Jessica, how are
Yeah.
you? Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Exactly.
Nothing deeper than that. And so that's why the next part of the story is so miraculous
Yes.
and so wonderful, because God completely planted a seed in both of us separately.
Yeah.
And I think that really speaks to who God is. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
and our
exciting.
friendship as well. So.
Totally. So to give a little more backstory, I have been a pastor's wife. Matt and I have been married for almost 15 years. And so he was a pastor already. So I married into that. And I had always been, I'm an introvert. So I would be behind the scenes, helping, supportive, loved ministry, but definitely not like, don't give me a mic. Don't make me stand on stage.
Right.
Don't look at me.
Yeah.
Just a shyer type person. But let's see, around 2013-ish, about 2014, God started stirring something in me to basically say, like, you had your season of that and I let you be there, but now it's time for you to rise up. And so Darlene Parton, who used to be a youth pastor here at East Coast years and years ago, she invited me randomly to come to Austin, Texas with her to a conference. And I was like, sure, that sounds fun. I love women's conferences. You know, I love getting away from my family for
I
a
need
little
a
bit.
break.
Yes, exactly. So it was perfect timing. And I met her out there, just me and her. And I sat in the conference and the lights went down and the curtain came up. And I didn't even know what the conference was called. That was literally like I was going in blind. I was like, I'm going for the fun.
Going for the fun.
Yes. And it said, "It's a time to rise up" was the name of the conference. And instantly in my gut, in my heart, I felt like physically, this is for me. It was so palpable. And it was so terrifying as well, because I knew what that meant. I knew that God had kind of already been stirring in me. That song Oceans
Yes.
by Hillsong was really big then. And, you know, You Called Me Out Upon the Water, The Great Unknown, My Feet May Fail. That whole song had been really ministering to me in the months prior, but I thought it was something to do with ministry with me and Matt. Like God was calling us into something like together. But what I realized at that moment was that was for me. God was calling me out into the water, into the deep, deep, deep unknown. And it was going to be all about him. So it was a time to rise up. And I just knew that I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that was God calling me into a new season. So I head home with all these new thoughts and emotions. And then I don't even know the timing of it. It was very quickly. I get a call on my cell phone and it says Sarah Wood. And like I said, I didn't even know I had Sarah Wood's phone number in my phone. So I'm like, why is Sarah Wood calling me? So I answer tentatively.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. And so a little bit of backstory before this phone call, just for me, is I was in a season of just, I guess you could say, I hate to use the word busyness, but it was a very tough season. My father had been very, very ill. And so we had actually stepped back from serving quite significantly at East Coast. And during that time, he ended up passing away. And so it was a very, I guess, stretching season, but also a season of rest where I was kind of emotionally being stretched, but not physically being present serving. And so I ended up kind of throwing myself into MOPS, which, if you don't know what that is, it's Mothers of Preschoolers, and it's a great, great organization where women who have children kindergarten and younger can come and just enjoy a hot meal or enjoy breakfast without little ones hanging on them. And we're able to not only feed them emotionally, but feed them spiritually as well, because we're able to minister to them and share the gospel with them.
Yeah.
So I ended up coordinating that group in Satellite Beach, which was so much fun. But during that time, I did feel a sense of, I don't want to say like maybe just tension of feeling like I love this organization. I love MOPS. I believe in ministering to women, but I feel like I'm called to pour into my local church. And there is nothing that was going to deter me from that. So after coordinating MOPS for a year, I felt led to want to try something a little different at East Coast Vieira. Our church was a campus that had just started, quote unquote. We were only probably about
2 or 3 years old.
2 or 3 years old at the time. And we really, at that campus, didn't have a lot of things yet for women. We didn't have the small groups flowing. We were just trying to find our sea legs as a campus.
Right.
And so I went ahead and felt led to say, hey, maybe we could do something that we did in MOPS, which is a Facebook page. I had done a Facebook page for our MOPS women's community, and it was just thriving because women, we get it, we're busy, right? We have kids or we have work or we just have things going on, and Facebook was a quick, easy way for us to connect and encourage one another. And I thought, if that worked with MOPS, hey, maybe that would work with East Coast Vieira.
Yeah.
So naturally, my first thought is I need to call probably the pastor's wife and ask her before I just come up with this idea. And I definitely wasn't going to do it without that blessing, but I did want to get her opinion. And so I looked in my phone and said, oh, perfect. I have Jessica Stahlbaum's number. So I went ahead and called her, and it was pretty amazing, though, to have, I think we were both surprised. Hey, this is awkward. We don't talk normally, but we're going to talk on the phone now.
Yeah.
But it was great to be able to talk to her about it and give the vision that God had given me for it. And then she was able to share that with Matt. And so Matt had some wisdom on that as well. That surprised both of us.
Yeah. Basically, she calls me and she shares the vision. And I was like, well, I think that's a good idea. Okay, so maybe we'll start that. And she gave me, maybe we'll do it in a, not right away, no rush, whatever.
Pray
just
about it.
Yeah, pray on it.
Pray
Think
on
on it. So I hang up and I talk to Matt, and he literally is like, let's do it tomorrow. Or let's do it today, he probably said.
Right.
He was ready because he has always championed me to do what I've been called to do, which has been, up to that point, stay at home, homeschool my kids, be a behind-the-scenes support person. But I knew that he was raring for me to rise up. And I had already I'd come home from that conference, and I had talked to him already, and I didn't know what all that meant. But he's ready. He's always been ready, and he's always supported me in whatever I felt called to do. So when I mentioned it, he saw it as an amazing opportunity and something we should do right away. So we pretty much did, right?
Yes, we did. Jessica, I want to say you called me right back.
I might
and
have
said, I was like, oh, maybe I forgot to say something, or maybe she forgot to say something.
Yes.
But she said, nope, Matt is ready on board, and I'm like, oh, well, we need to do a meeting. So that was kind of the beginning of just kind of how East Coast Vieira Women started.
That's what we called it, because we are not creative.
Exactly. That is not a gifting that we have. We know that. We own that. And we'll talk about that later when we do the Sisterhood Vision. But the greatest thing about it is we want to say that at first it was something small, and we didn't know where it was going to go. Nope. Granted, our heart was bursting at the seams at this potential that it had, but we never wanted it to stay in one place. No. We always wanted it to grow. But it was just the thought of, okay, God, what are you going to do with this? Let's just take one step first.
I felt it was just a step of obedience.
Yes.
And I think that every time we do anything, it's always like God gives us just enough to see our next step.
Yes.
But we didn't see our Passion Conference. We didn't see Flourish Conference. We didn't see any of that at this point. So it was just scary enough to start a Facebook page.
Let's just do a Facebook page. And how do we do that? Let me research that a little bit.
Exactly. Do we do a page? Do we do a group? You remember all those questions? Yes. So we started the Facebook page, and we called it East Coast Vieira Women, and it was amazing. And we really saw the women start to rise up and connect, and we saw them really hungry for that. What we really saw instantly too was so many prayer requests. This was a place where women were finding that they could actually put themselves out there in a private page with women that they kind of knew
and respected.
Yeah. And they trusted. And so there was a lot of prayer requests. And so what you and I really figured out quickly was, man, we need to have a place where we're physically together with these women, praying and teaching them how to pray and pray for one another and lift up their requests to God. So it's not just that's all the Facebook page is. So we started a prayer group. That was our next thing. Once a month, we're meeting together. Before, at that time, we only had one service.
Right.
So before our first service, once a month, we were getting together. We were praying together 20 minutes. That was it. And we saw so much fruit from that. We saw women come in who were in their 60s and telling us they'd never prayed out loud before.
Right.
And so we knew we were onto something. We could feel the Holy Spirit just be like, yep, you guys are on the right track. Keep trucking. After that, we did several other things. We had a bunko. We did Christmas breakfasts. We did a paint night. We just did things that we were like, what do we do next?
How do we connect?
Yes. Just trying to connect and bring people together. So I can't remember when it was. I'm going to say 2015. We went to Shine Conference in Jacksonville. And this is an amazing women's conference that's been going on for 15 years?
I want to say it was,
15,
definitely over 10.
Yeah.
So.
Pastor Carrie Weems is the founder of Shine, and she's the co-leader at Celebration Church in Jacksonville. And I had gone to this conference a couple times prior over the years, but this time we had some momentum. So you and I went, and we took, 20 or 30 girls with us. And this was the conference that Carrie Weems had just written a book, and she called it The Sisterhood Effect. And she had literally just finished it and got it published, and she gave everyone there a copy of it.
Yes.
And so Sarah and I both have our Sisterhood Effect books here in the studio and are just tagged up and highlighted and written all over because this book has meant so much to us. So basically, do you want to share about just the impact of that specific conference and what God did?
Absolutely. So the greatest thing about going to that conference was I think I think I can speak for Jessica and say we had that passion in our heart to empower women and to let women know that they are valued and they're worthy and that we want them to plug in. And we didn't have a name for that.
Right.
Like it was hard. It was this nebulous term of just like, we love women. It's women's ministry, I guess. But like we don't.
But it felt different.
That word was not just like, it wasn't gelling, honestly. And so when we went to Shine, we saw sisterhood, and we were actually able to see what sisterhood was because originally when we honestly just Googled names for women's ministries, sisterhood came up, and it was something that I didn't understand until I was able to be in that environment and see the women truly
embodying that, what that meant, what the word meant. Because honestly, at first we were like, we're not super duper girly people, and naturally. And so when we saw the word sisterhood, both of us were like, that's kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
We didn't like it. We didn't like it at all.
No, it was weird.
So we were like, looked at other ones and we're like, we're sticking with these because we are women until we can figure something else out. You know, like why change a bad thing?
Exactly.
So yeah, we went there and we saw what sisterhood was.
Right, absolutely. So it's a championing of women. They're in each other's corner. They are inclusive. They are focused on one another. And we will definitely go into that. But actually just being able to see them partner together in friendship and cause to build the vision of God's house, which in our case is East Coast Sierra, but as a whole, the church, right?
The big C church.
You say capital C, which I love that, the capital C church. That is what we are. And I felt like, wow, this has completely changed the word sisterhood for me.
Yeah.
And now I am like 120% sure that God wants us to call it sisterhood.
Yeah.
But first, I have to pray about it.
Oh my gosh. So on the way home, we were not sitting near each other during this particular talk. We were sitting with other girls who were with us, and I just felt in my heart burning. I cried. I think you cried. It was just like a moment where God was like, this is it. This is it, girls. Whether you thought it was cheesy, but this is what it means, and this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So we're driving home, and all the girls in our car were like, should we call it sisterhood now? What should we do? Da, 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 da. And they're talking, and both Sarah and I are like, we can't even talk. We can't even look at each other. We're like, it's too holy.
Too emotional. It's too holy. My sandals are still on. Like I can't step on that ground.
Yes.
You did feel very just almost like you needed some time to just allow God to process that in you. And so, but even though I think we both knew that it would be sisterhood and that's what God was calling us to do, we wanted to be 100% open to what God was showing us.
Yes.
And so it was exciting, though. It was exciting.
So we took this book home and we read it. And I don't think we talked until we had finished the book. And then, I mean, we probably talked all throughout it. Like, this is it. But let's finish the book. Let's do it. Because we're those people. But in The Sisterhood Effect by Carrie Weems, on page 106, if you have the book, you should totally get the book. It's good. She writes, what is sisterhood and what does it mean to us? And to give some backstory, Bobby Houston, who's the co-leader of Hillsong Church, which is a huge church, global church in Australia, started in Australia. She started sisterhood 30 years ago. And so Carrie Weems talks all in her book about how she actually went to Color Conference in Australia. And that's where she went and found had basically the same exact experience we had with, oh my gosh, this is what sisterhood is. Right. I have to bring this to my church. And so she talks all about that. And she talks about that was her moment of recognizing what sisterhood is. She brings it to her church. And she says so many times in her book, I just want other churches, other women to have that experience I had and bring it to their church. So I love that we get to be a part of that. It's really special. But she writes that sisterhood is not a gathering, a meeting, or even a ministry. We have gatherings and meetings, and we organize our efforts in the form of a ministry. But sisterhood is the company of women, and I'm going to say our church, who call East Coast Christian Center home, and whose hearts, for one reason or another, are knit to ours. And it's just everything. It's everything that we were like, yes, this is it. The goal is to gather, equip, and mobilize. It's not to gather just to have a potluck. It's not to get together just because it's been a while. It's what is the purpose of our gathering?
Absolutely.
You know? So it's just been amazing.
Absolutely. And I think something that's great that I always hear you say, and I always hear from just sisterhood in general, is that sisterhood is who we are. It's not what we do.
Exactly.
And so it's something that we do have sisterhood events, like you said. We do have Bible studies. That's great. But we always do it for a purpose, for the fruit. What are we going to be activated in while doing this? Everything is intentional and mindful. And so we want to be sure that we show that in who we are.
Right.
And I think that's just a great thing to remember always.
Yeah. And we are not events driven. We say that all the time.
Yes.
We are values driven. And so I think we should just get into our values.
Yeah.
Sarah and I took a trip. When was that?
It was a couple months after Shine.
Yeah,
actually.
right after
Yeah.
Shine. That's right. I think Shine was in October and we went in November possibly.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So it was a month.
To Tulsa.
Goodness.
We went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we went to a gathering there for Propel Women, which is a women's movement that Christine Kane started, again, out of Hillsong. And we had our Carrie Weems Sisterhood Effect book, and we just knew, we felt strongly that we needed to create some language around this. What is sisterhood? What is sisterhood to us? What is it in our context? What is it in our church? And so we just said, let's use the time on the plane. And we're going to pray and see if God will give us some language around that. So we came up with 5 values that we say this is a sisterhood woman. And so number 1 is she knows her worth. She makes the choice to live a life that is unique, pure, and authentic to the plan God has ordained for her. And for each one, we have a verse that we felt God showed us, and this one is Ephesians 1:4. Even before he made the world, God loved us and chose us in Christ to be holy and without fault in his eyes. So I think that's where we have to start, is to know your value, you have to know your worth, and your worth is in Jesus and nothing else.
That's right. And I love it too because it's not an excuse to be me focused at all.
Oh
it's
my
an
gosh,
excuse to it's not an excuse for self-indulgence or selfishness or anything. It is definitely something God focused. And it's when we recognize that God has placed us on this planet to walk out a purpose.
Yes.
And it is also not only recognizing that, but recognizing that your sister next to you has value as well.
Yes.
And placing that value. So yes, she may have a lower capacity than you or a higher capacity than you. We don't compare. We don't compete. She has worth.
Right.
And there's nothing that will diminish that from you or her.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's huge.
It's knowing your worth, but knowing, like you said, your lane.
Yes.
Your lane is different than everyone else's lane. Your capacity, even in the season, maybe you're in a lower capacity season because you have a lot on your plate in your family or a lot on your plate in your workplace. Like, that doesn't diminish your value or the worth or the thing that God has called you to do.
Absolutely.
So number 1 is all about she knows her worth. And
number 2 is she is irreplaceable. She recognizes and responds to his invitation to participate in his great plan to rescue humanity. And we have a verse that goes with that as well, Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And this is an example of knowing our identity. So once we know our worth, then we find out who we are. And we have to know who we are. We have to be, because it is non-negotiable that you have got to align your identity with what God says.
Yep.
Otherwise, the world's going to tell you who you are.
That's
and
right.
that is wrong. And so when we accept Jesus, your identity is truly jump-started into a new creation.
Yeah. You are a new creation.
You are a new creation. Old things have passed away.
All things have become
So
new.
you have your own giftings. You have your own sphere of influence. You have your own unique personality. And therefore you, like you said, have your own race to run in front of you.
Yeah. And you are irreplaceable to the plan.
Absolutely.
You make such an impact. I say to people all the time when they're new to the church, I said, we are more complete now because you are here. You bring something to our church and to our body of believers that we didn't have before. And we're so glad you're here. And I mean it every time, because I just love that.
Mm-hmm.
Our 3rd value is she acknowledges her God-given potential. She opens her heart to ever-increasing capacity for the kingdom and desires to see others set free and flourishing. Now, flourishing is very just special to our hearts, because we just wrapped up a Flourish conference, and it was a powerful women's conference that God just moved so mightily, and it was called Flourish. And it has been awesome to see girls literally blossoming before our eyes, girls who are acknowledging their God-given potential that they never knew they had, who are serving in capacities that they never knew. We took a picture of all the people serving, and it was over 100 women on the stage who were serving, coming together as sisters, as sisterhood, to make this thing happen. And it was just, it's powerful to see.
Absolutely.
So, I love that one.
Absolutely. Number 4 is she embraces her feminine role. She intentionally places value on the distinctly custom contribution that only she can bring. She is virtuous and capable and clothed in strength and dignity. She is filled with joy for the future. And our verse that goes with that is Psalm 139, 13 through 16. You made all my delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. And I love that because it's really taking ownership and realizing that we bring something unique to the table. So when we're born into this world, God has placed a value on us even before we're born, which is great. But as we said before, is that the world can just pick at that value and take it away from you if you aren't holding fast to it. And I think as women, we are called, and as sisterhood, to reclaim that value for ourselves and for each other. And that means when there's women that are hurting across the globe or women hurting right in front of us, that we are going to let them know that, no, this is your role, that you are feminine, that we can model for you how to be a woman and a healthy woman within the church. And I think that that means not just sisterhood leaders. This is for you. This is when you are walking out love and kindness and authenticity and strength and beauty. It's a good reminder to say people are watching you, women are watching you, and they're looking at you to say, what is a woman? What is a healthy woman? We are not called to model anything else like a man or something like that. Men bring something wonderful and unique to the table, and we do as well. So we are definitely need to walk in that.
Yes, I love that. And we say, if you are a woman, you are sisterhood.
Exactly.
And we say it all the time. We've had girls come up to us and other people and say, so this sisterhood, soap group, this Bible study you're doing, can I come to that? And we're like, if you're a woman,
it's
you're
yours.
Sisterhood, come. So that's our hark.
Yes.
If you are a woman, you are sisterhood.
Yes.
We say that all the time.
It's yours.
It is. And lastly, number 5 might be my favorite.
This is we both kind of made a face. Oh, we love this.
She loves the house of God. She positions herself to hear God's voice, to encounter him, and to be used for his purpose. She utilizes the gifts given to her, not for performance, but for the work of his heart. I love that. It's so good. And we actually have 3 verses for this one because we loved it so much. First one is Psalm 118. 22 and 23. The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone, and that's Jesus. This is the Lord's doing, and it is wonderful to see. So we are all about the house of God. Sisterhood is not, we don't call it a women's ministry. We try not to because even though that's a context that most people understand is that language, but it's to complete the church. It's to help the church. It's to bring life, and it's not for sideways energy. It's not to be like the women are over here doing this. No, we are like we're serving. We are sisterhood when we're serving on Sunday morning, and we are all about championing the local church because it's the hope of the world.
Absolutely,
and that is our heart, and that's where we want to see ourselves, leveraging our influence. I have this quote from Carrie Weems' book, and she said, sisterhood exists to help women build a house, quote unquote, that will be strong enough to weather life's storms and expansive enough to contain the full, amazing life we all long for. It's all about building the house of God.
Absolutely. It's always been about building the house of God. Yep. And I hate to backtrack, but my heart has always been, and Jessica's heart has always been, is that to point people to come to church. Sisterhood is amazing and it's wonderful, but we encourage all women to come no matter what. If you've stepped into a church before or not, we want you to come to our events or come to anything. But ultimately, our goal is that you plug into East Coast and you plug into church or your home church. Just plug in, root yourself at your church, be planted there, and allow yourself to grow.
Yes.
Because if you're uprooting yourself out of the house of God, you just cannot grow. And our hope and our love and our goal for you lines up with God's, that you flourish. Yeah. And I hate using that word again, but to truly flourish in what God's called you to do. And the way to do that is being planted in the house of God.
Yeah,
There's no other way.
And we feel like serving gives people the opportunity to achieve dreams and goals they never knew they had. It has for me.
Absolutely.
I'm doing this and I never knew it was my dream, but it absolutely is. And it was God's dream for me that I didn't even know. But through the local church and through sisterhood, I'm living a dream. And, so are you. Again, in Carrie Weems' book, she says, when the capacity of the women in any church is not affirmed, filled up, and released to multiply, a vacuum will be created. Women were created to bring just the heart of God from the feminine side into this world. And so it's almost hard to put words around. But when that is not happening, when women are not being affirmed and given a place in the local church, like a vacuum is created. Right. And what is going to fill up a vacuum? Kind of like a silo, it says.
Right.
So she talks a lot about the silo effect versus the sisterhood effect, which is the title of her book, The Sisterhood Effect. And she said the silo effect siphons the capacity and contribution of women outside the walls of the church, where they must go to be filled and deployed. So women are leaving the church to go find their purpose outside of the church, which it makes me so mad. Like my eyes are big
actually
right
dangerous.
Now. Yes, it is. But the sisterhood effect, in contrast, multiplies the capacity and contribution of women back into the local church, where they are seen as integral and not peripheral to its vitality.
Absolutely.
Is that not everything?
It's everything. And I think, I never let a time go by where I don't thank and applaud our executive team here at East Coast, who has always championed women, who has always given us a place and set the table and said, yes, we believe in you. Yep. Yes, we know and understand that you are half the body of Christ, like Christine Kane says, because she says we are half the body of Christ because we are working with men to complete the work that he has created us to do. And so I am thankful that they have allowed us to follow in their footsteps. Some of my greatest mentors are men on the executive team that I've looked up to from afar and said, how do they do this? And how do they speak, and how do they have meetings with people, and how do they communicate with people? And so I think it's great to know that we are in a thankful place, but not everyone is. Right. And so to remember that we want to get those women healthy.
I feel like we just scratched the surface of what sisterhood is, but I feel like starting the conversation is awesome. I want to point people to this podcast so they can hear our heart, how it started, the behind the scenes, and this is just the beginning. The best is yet to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. And can I just end with this verse, because I just love this. It just popped out to me. It says, "May our daughters be like graceful pillars carved to beautify a palace." And daughters, you can be anywhere from age 1 or newborn all the way up to age 120. We are all daughters of God. So
that's right. And if you are a woman, you are sisterhood.
Thank you, ladies, so much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for joining us for this Sisterhood podcast. You can check us out at eccc.us/sisterhood or on Instagram at East Coast Sisterhood.